LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. So you can replay this webinar anytime. For reference, we'll have that link later on. And if you have to send it to your friends or family, obviously. All of our sequence of webinars are also on our YouTube page. So if you wanted to watch any previous ones you missed information on or wanted to learn a little bit more from the previous items, they're also available on our YouTube page. So I am admitting a couple more people here into the meeting. So again, for those that are just joining, again, utilize the chat functionality here. I'm going to type out my name. So that's where we'll be answering our questions. And we'll pause throughout the webinar to answer your questions. And if you don't have any questions, that's great too. But again, we will have this uploaded to our social media later tonight. And I guess from there, Shane, I will leave it to you.
Thank you, Corey. Great introduction as always. So today's going to focus primarily on the forms that everybody is hearing a lot about lately, right? So the forgiveness part has been released in August. There was this long, massive form that basically everybody can use. That's your 3508 form. And then the SBA, in an attempt to make the process simpler for people, a couple weeks later released the form 3508EZ. And that was for individuals, and we'll get into the specifics of it, who meet certain criteria. It's a truncated, a smaller version of that other form, but still pretty lengthy, and there's still a lot of calculations, that type of stuff that go into the form. Now, over the last week, or I think about a week ago, the SBA released one additional form, and this form is for individuals who have PPP loans under $50,000. So this form is basically just a simplified form. You still have to supply all the documentation that you normally would at this point. Blanket forgiveness that I've talked about has not happened, unfortunately. Congress, the president have kind of stalled with the election, and unfortunately it doesn't sound like any of the blanket forgiveness part for loans under 150,000 will happen until that after the election is over. But they did release this simplified form for loans under 50,000, which really there's no sort of calculations that you have to fill out on the form. You're just attesting to the fact that you used it appropriately, signing and going through that process. Now, you'll still have to upload that form to our portal and go through the application on our website. We are working on that, and I'll give you an update on that shortly. But that's what we're going to spend most of our time today on. And then obviously, if there's any specific questions that you guys, save those for the end, or feel free to ask as you go through. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started by sharing my screen. There we go. All right, mouse, where'd you go? There we are. Okay. Be helpful if I shared the PowerPoint itself, though. Corey, can you see the PowerPoint, or can you see the play version, or do you see just my PowerPoint?
Sorry, I always mute myself for that. I can see the PowerPoint. It's not full screen.
Not full screen. All right, so
yeah.
I'm on the wrong one then.
There we go, much better.
I think now you can see the full screen. Okay, perfect. All right. So this is the updates as of 10/22. Okay, so everybody that has a PPP loan that is over $150,000, at this point, you should have your registration link for the forgiveness portal. You get that directly from our loan servicer, MBFS, which stands for Member Business Financial Solutions. They're our SBA partner. They do all of our servicing. So you would get that link directly from them. If you do not have it, you could reach out to that business lending email, let us know, and then I'll make sure that it gets sent back out to you. Sometimes it gets stuck in spam, that type of stuff. But if you have a loan over $150,000 at this point, you should have received your link and can apply for forgiveness as soon as you go through your covered period, or you've exhausted the funds, and you could validate that through supporting documentation. Okay, so everybody $150,000 and over, for the most part, really there's not going to be a ton of updates for you on this webinar. The webinar previously, where I went through screenshots of the actual application, that applies to you, and you can go and review that PowerPoint or that presentation as you go through the actual application. So today will kind of be more of a focus on those people that are not over that Again, though, if you happen to be one of those individuals and you have any questions, just reach out to that business lending email, which is right on this page, and then right at the end of the PowerPoint as well. You'll have an opportunity to grab it from there. Okay. Now the hot button item for everybody, which is loans under 150,000. So unfortunately, as I just disclosed to you a little bit earlier, Congress is still working on that part. You know, it's not going to happen obviously until some point in November, if not, you know, unfortunately, even longer than that. So if there is a need for you to apply for forgiveness, whether it's extenuating circumstances, you're just ready and you need to move it through, we will absolutely take that application for you. However, you're going to have to supply all of the required documentation and validation that you would if your loan was over 150,000 or as I've outlined in the previous meetings. And we'll go over what those documents are again. But unfortunately, you do have to provide all of that documentation. You do have to go through those calculations on your own at the very least. You don't have to supply it in the case of the 3508S form. But you do have to go through that. It is not blanket forgiveness where you just give us that one document and then eventually the SBA pays off the loan and you're kind of done with it. We do anticipate and we continue to hear that that is being worked on, and both sides of the aisle seem to have some support of some version of it. It's just where that will land, whether or not it's a dollar amount or whatnot. You know, that's what is kind of up in the air right now. So if you do have a PPP loan under 150,000, again, I'm still going to recommend that you hold off. From a simplicity standpoint, it's just going to make your life a lot easier to, I think, wait for blanket forgiveness and just have them forgive it, as opposed to supplying all the documents, going through that process, sitting here waiting for you know, us to obviously approve the decision for forgiveness and then pass it to the SBA for them to then approve their forgiveness and pay off your loan as well. It might just be easier, again, if you're not, you know, in any rush to do it, to just hold off until the blanket forgiveness. Now, if you don't want to do that though, again, reach out to business lending. You guys do not have that registration link as of yet, unless you already have reached out to us and we sent it out to you. So you would have to get it through that. Now, once we are ready for a larger group to apply, you know, and I'll give you two examples. So either the blanket forgiveness happens at some point in November, and then anybody under 150,000 and under happens, or in the case of the $50,000 and less 3508 form, which we are in the middle of finishing coding. We'll let you know once those portals are up and running, and then we'll send out your login information at that point to access it. So for loans 50,000 and under, that is likely going to be probably in the next 2 weeks. We'll have the portal, the forgiveness portal, updated with the new form that was released. You'll be able to go through that and supply all the documentation there. And then the loan, that leaves realistically loans that are above 50,000 to 150. You can absolutely go through that forgiveness process, but you would end up using the regular 3508 form or the 3508 Easy if you happen to qualify for that form. Okay. So again, if your business absolutely has a need, please reach out to that business lending, and you're under that 150,000 mark, please reach out to that business lending group. If you're under 50,000, we're going to ask you to hold off for about 2 weeks or so while we finish the 3508S coding in the form. Anything over that 50,000, you can certainly go forward. If you do have something that's under 50,000, you can't wait that 2 weeks, let us know as well. You're just going to end up having to use those longer forms and fill them out in, unfortunately, the long version of it. Okay. Remember though, one of the changes that took place in August was that basically nobody will have any sort of payment due for these PPP loans until likely much later in 2021. So basically it's 10 months after your covered period expires, right? So your covered period is either that 8 or 24-week period in which you use the PPP funds. Any sort of repayment, the quickest that would happen would be 10 months after that, right? So most people aren't, even if they're in the 24-month covered period, haven't even gotten past that yet. So they've got plenty of time to really worry about this. And the SBA is paying your interest along the way. And then there's no payment obviously due during this. Once you apply for forgiveness, you still won't have a payment due until a decision is made on that forgiveness. So if you have any loan documents from April, May, June, whatever it happens to be, and it says that your payment starts in November, of this year, just disregard it. That was based off of what the program was at that time. Nobody has a payment that's due at all in 2020 and likely for a good chunk of 2021 as well. Okay. Change screens. Come on. Next one. No. That one. No. Those over here.
Click on the screen, do it. Happens to me.
All right. So
Hey, before we start the next one, Shane, real quick, we had some people join in a little late.
Sure.
So just again, I utilize the chat functionality for questions and comments. I did put in that email for you guys, businesslending@nutmegsstatefcu.org. So if you do need that, it is in the chat as well.
Thanks, Cord. Yes, everybody. And again, the chat function is right below at the bottom of the screen if you need it. Okay. So which form should I use? That's kind of the question right now. And I've got a breakdown, but if you happen to be going through this, this is a really nice truncated kind of matrix here for you to use. All borrowers essentially can use the 3508 form. That's the initial form that was released. Only certain borrowers can use the 3508 EZ. And then only certain borrowers can obviously use the 3508S. And we're going to get into exactly what those are now. But if you happen to need to look at it really quickly, this was a great chart that I found that gives you something good for a quick glance. Okay, so we're going to start with the 3508 EZ. This was the form that was released in August, the second form after the initial regular 3508 one. Okay, so this is the form that you can use if you qualify for each of the individual bullets below. Okay, and the top section is really, you have to apply, both of those have to apply, and then the bottom one is both of those have to apply. So as long as both of these two figures apply, right, which is you're a self-employed individual, contractor, sole proprietor that does not have any employees or didn't have any during the time of PPP, and you didn't include any employee compensation, and if you didn't reduce anybody's salaries by more than 25% during that covered period, basically that's what that next large box says. And then on top of that, if you didn't reduce any of their annual salaries by more than 25% during the alternative covered period, which is, any of the salaries compared to the beginning of January 2020 to March 31st, right? So that's a different period that you could have used to help determine your hourly wages. And then if you did not bring people, or if you brought everybody back during the covered period so that you have that same employee headcount, right? So we talked a lot about making sure that your full-time employee headcount doesn't dip. So as long as you haven't had that happen, you would be able to utilize that form. So again, if you're a self-employed borrower, independent contractor, you have not reduced anybody's wages by more than 25%, or you have not reduced any of your full-time headcount, generally you should be able to use that 3508 EZ form. There's a nice checklist online, and then also at the end of this PowerPoint that you could download as well to go through. I literally copy and pasted the verbiage though here, and that's what these bullets actually are. Okay. So if you qualify based off of what you're looking at now, you can submit and go through the 3508 EZ process. It's not really a huge difference than the 3508. It's 3 additional lines or 3 lines that are taken out, but it's something, I guess.
Hey, Shane, I got a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to send it to you via Skype just so you have it. All right, so first question I have is from, where'd it go? Deborah Glass. The question being from Deborah. So if my loan is under 50K, should I fill out the 358 EZ once you post it on a portal, or should she hold off in case the blanket forgiveness happens?
It's definitely a decision for you and what you feel like makes sense. I advocate for just waiting, to be honest. The less hassle I would go through with the government, probably the better. But there's nothing wrong if you want to go through and certainly apply now using that 3508 S form. You can do that. Deb, I would suggest definitely waiting the 2 weeks so that you have to do the 35, or you can do the 3508 S form though, because you don't have to go through all of those calculations on the paper and show it. It's a much easier form, and I'll show you a copy of it towards the end of this. So I would just wait for that point, probably, if I were you, at the very least. But in regards to waiting for blanket forgiveness, it just depends on what you guys need in the end. We'll certainly accommodate it if needed. Now, I will say the most responsive, probably easiest process for you to go through will be that blanket forgiveness process once it rolls out, though. And the reason I say that is, as many of you went through when we first went through this whole PPP thing, right? Everybody's doing all of this stuff all at once, and it just creates bottlenecks. And if all multiple hundred of these PPP loans try to come, all in at once for us, it's just going to delay things for everybody. And everybody's going through this. Every lender, unfortunately, is going through this and trying to allocate appropriate resources to manage these things. And that's why a lot of them are not actually even allowing people to request this until that blanket forgiveness part. That blanket forgiveness part, just so you know as well, almost covers something like 90% of all of the, if it lands at the 150,000 mark, 90% of all of the PPP loans that were issued to the public. So basically at that point, 90% of the loans are not going to have to go through anything outside of supplying a signed form attesting that to the fact that they use the funds appropriately. So Deb, that's up to you, but that's kind of my feedback on that one. Hopefully that helps.
Similar question from Michael on the 3508S. I sent that one to you in chat as well.
Mike, in this the October 31st date, no, I would not worry about it. So I think that is just and he emailed me about this earlier and I wasn't actually sure. So I would ignore that. I think that's just more of a form and a date for the SBA. There's no actual 1031 expiration date on the submission of that form that I've heard of or anything like that. And if you look at other forms that they have out there too, they've got that same thing where the expiration date is earlier than the date we are now, but the forms are still applicable. So I would not worry about those at all.
All right, that's it in chat right now. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Deb, for sending those in.
Yes.
Again, if you guys type it out, we'll answer them.
Great questions, guys. All right. So now we'll segue over to the 3508S form. This is the one that was released about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that, where it applies to individuals who have loans that are under 50,000, as long as you don't have an affiliate company also, and that affiliate company's total PPP loan is over 50,000. So the best way to describe an affiliate is if you've got a common ownership or a subsidiary business, right? So a business that owns a business, that type of thing. Those are all essentially considered affiliates from the SBA standpoint. If all of those affiliates loans total over $2 million, then you would not qualify for the 3508S, even though that one business's loan is less than 50,000. Okay, so this would only work for people who did not have affiliates that had the loans over 2 million. That's probably very few people, but there's a distinction there for that. Okay, if you are one of those folks that has a loan that's less than 50,000, though, you can certainly do that. And it's got a lot fewer calculations. We're going to get to that in the next couple pages. But basically, this form takes out all of the full-time equivalent calculations, all of those things that really don't pertain per se to a lot of these borrowers, or are not as relevant in this instance. So again, this should make it a lot easier for everybody, but we are still in the process of coding it. So we're probably about 2 weeks out before you're able to use this form and submit it through our portal correctly. Okay. All right. No, I just love this one. No, go back. All right. So that leaves the 3508S form. All right. So basically, if you're not the individual that would qualify for that 3508 easy, right? You didn't, you're the business who made sure you didn't reduce full-time headcounts, that type of stuff, or you did reduce that, or you have a loan over $50,000, you would use the regular 3508 form at this point, and then obviously supply all of the same documentation for it. If you guys want to go through what that form and how to fill it out looks like, that's where Corey referenced that we have all of our previous webinars posted on YouTube and I think some other social media. I have some links within the end of this PowerPoint for the screenshots that I went over for the actual portal as well. So I'll direct you back to that presentation just to give you a formal kind of process for that. And then what I will do as well, and I'm kind of skipping back here, but once the 3508S form is updated, because that's so different than the 3508EZ and the 3508 regular form, I will put together another presentation that does some screenshots of how to go through that process online once that's up and running as well. That'll likely be the, like I said, in about 2 weeks or so. Okay. That's Bill Gates, right, Corey? Totally Bill Gates.
Yeah, it's on the right side. It is.
Awesome.
Is that Terry Bradshaw on left? Who was that? I didn't even notice.
Looks so young there. All right.
Real quick, before you get in the next slide, I just sent you one more follow-up question from Mike.
Yep.
Due date. It's January 1st, 2020. Is that
Ignore
still
it.
accurate?
Ignore all due dates on any loan documents, on any system, anything like that. Again, you will not have a loan payment due for, at minimum, 10 months after your covered period ends. So even if you're at that 8 week, even if you were at the 8 week, right? So if you got a loan in early April, 8 weeks out from that, so April, May, June, we'll say some point in June, right? You're 10 months after June before you even have to, the deadline to get the forgiveness application in eclipses for you. And then that payment would start because you didn't take action. Okay. Obviously within that 10 month period, if you submit the forgiveness application, your payment is no longer, it won't be due until we make a decision on it at that point. And we communicate out if you have any remaining balance that you would have to pay or whatever that happens to be. But ignore any sort of payment due dates or anything like that on your closing documents, in online banking, anything like that. Good. All right. So again, same thing applies in this case in regards to the stuff that you're going to have to submit. So we're just going to go through that really quickly. I think I covered this a number of times, so I don't want to beat it to death. But if you do have specific questions in regards to it, please feel free to chat those in, and I'd be happy to address them more directly that way. But obviously, you need the forgiveness portal link. And again, that'll likely come out for more individuals in the near future. And then anybody over 150,000, you should have that link already. Definitely suggest reviewing the previous PPP webinars, or at the very least, the instructions for how to fill out the forms themselves that the SBA released. And again, those forms are the 3508, 3508EZ, and then the recent release 3508S. And then you need some brief information on the ownership. Most of that was on your initial application anyway, if you happen to need it again. Okay. So we get into what do you need to apply? Again, there is no blanket forgiveness at this point. So as of today, everybody has to supply this information. Even if you end up filling out the 3508S form and you don't have to physically put the numbers on the paper, you still have to supply the documentation. You still have to go through the calculation on your end. Okay. So from a payroll standpoint, we're going to look to collect similar things to what we did at the origination stage, right? So we're going to look to collect payroll statements. That could be from an ADP. If it happens to be in Excel, because it's the only way you keep it, certainly that information works too. 941s, that would work. Unemployment tax filings, individuals who provided or used their Schedule Cs or their K1s. They would just carry those over from 2019 as well. So you'll just have to supply that again. The reason that I believe they're having you supply it again is because they want to make sure that the version that you're filing is the same version that you submitted earlier in the year to us. If it is not, you are likely going to see some reduction in forgiveness if your net income has reduced since the beginning of the year when you supplied us with the rough draft of your Schedule C, just so you're aware. Okay. And then, any for health insurance, retirement plans, that type of stuff, if there's no formalized document that you could provide, a cancel check or statement, something along those lines, is usually sufficient to show that you've paid that. Okay. So that's for payroll. Corey, any payroll questions come up?
just got one. Oh, there we go. Just got one in from Gene. It's in the actual group chat. We have a very small business, 3 people. Is the 308S form? Sorry, Gene, can you be a little bit more specific with that question? Shane, I don't know if you can see it in the chat.
No, I'm gonna.
I'll send it to you in Skype right now.
Thank you.
See if you have a little bit more insight to that than I do. If not, Gene, if you could just be a little bit more specific with that question, that'd be great.
I think I can get it. We have a small business, 3 people. Is the third? Yes. So I believe as long as you haven't let anybody go, there hasn't been any significant change, you would likely qualify for that 3508S form from what I'm seeing, because your loan amount is low enough. So yes, I would think you can.
That was the only one for right now.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on. So then there's the non-payroll costs that you have to validate on top of that, right? So part of the qualifying expenses that you could have used the PPP funds for was interest on your mortgage, right? So if the business has a mortgage, you can use part of the PPP proceeds to pay down the interest, not the principal, but the interest. Okay, so we would collect either an amortization schedule, copy of a canceled check, bank statement showing the payments, then the breakdown of principal and interest, and that should be fine. And then something that validates the fact that you had that mortgage prior to February of 2020. If you did not, you cannot use that, unfortunately, as a qualifying expense. And the same goes for leases and utility payments. All of those had to be in effect prior to, I think it was February 12th, 2020. Your lease payments, again, a copy of the lease agreement, canceled checks or something like that would certainly work. And then utility payments, any invoices, that type of stuff. If you've got an online banking record of payments, that's probably acceptable as well. Or canceled check, that type of stuff would work to validate that. And then usually an invoice from prior to February 12th, 2020 to validate it was in existence before that would suffice for that specific utility expense. Again, so you're looking at that information, guys, and you're saying, man, I've got to put all this stuff together again. Might not have to. Just sit tight. I'm pretty confident that there's some sort of blanket forgiveness that is going to take place. I don't know exactly where it will land, but I'm pretty confident something will probably happen, and it will make your lives a lot easier. And you're not going to have to supply a single thing that was on these last 2 pages if you fall within that bucket. So just remember that, okay? All right. I don't know why I put this at the end. I think I just dropped it in there. Probably should have been earlier up. So I'll move it for everybody else later. But this is what the form 3508S looks like. Okay. Pretty straightforward. So if you remember the first 2 forms, the 3508 regular one, the 3508 easy, those were like, I don't know, 11, 12 pages, something like that. This is 2. And one of the pages, you don't even have to fill out because it's just demographic information. So you don't have to fill it out if you don't want. Okay. So you're going to look at this, and what are you really doing here? Basically, all you're doing is supplying them information on the PPP loan, what you applied for, how much you got, making sure that the employee full-time head count, didn't reduce. That's the employees at time of loan, employees at time of forgiveness. Inquiring whether or not you had an ELD advance loan. Again, remember, if you took an ELD advance loan, and that's that advance that they gave you up to $10,000 as of today, they're going to reduce your forgiveness by that amount, because what they were doing is essentially giving you part of your PPP money in advance is what they came to the table with later. Not exactly how they sold it, but unfortunately, that's kind of where they landed with that. So if you did have the EIDL number, you're going to need to know how much you received and what that EIDL number is. Even if you do not put that information in there, I am pretty certain they're going to figure it out because it's all tied to your social security number. So if you got one, might as well put it in there. So it doesn't delay any of your other forgiveness. Okay. And then what you're doing is you're essentially testing to the fact that you did not reduce people's salaries by more than that 25%, right? That you used at least 60% of the funds for payroll, and then the other 40% could you go towards those other qualifying costs. That you understand that if you knowingly made false statements, they can certainly go after you, that type of stuff. That what you've supplied to us is accurate documentation, and that it supports your calculation that you've done on your own, right? So that's an important thing. Just because you have this form, you still have to go through making sure that you've exhausted the funds the appropriate way, and it's having you attest to the fact that you did that calculation essentially. That your tax documents that you submitted, right? If you submitted 941s, if you submitted a Schedule C, that all of those were the forms that you are going to submit to the IRS or that are from other agencies that they would be involved with. If they are not, again, that is technically a breach of the information that you provided and could reduce your forgiveness, if they happen to catch that. Okay. So for the most part, again, you're going to go through all those calculations on your own. You've come to the terms with the fact that you've used all of your PPP loan during your covered period appropriately. It's under $50,000. Feel free to use this truncated form. And then once our portal is up and running in the next 2 weeks or so, you'd be able to take this, fill out the rest of the information in our forgiveness portal, upload this form, and then that should be all that you have to supply in addition to the verification documents. Okay. And then that normal process, as we're about to go outline, will take place. Corey, any questions on this form?
All quiet. Oh, right when I said that, chat came through from Gino. Put it in Skype for you so you can see it. And just so everyone can see it as well. Question comes from Gene. Even if they wait the 2 weeks, will they have to fill out something to get forgiveness? Or is it possible they have to do nothing at all?
Regardless of even if blanket forgiveness goes through at some point, you're going to have to fill something out. The difference is going to be whether or not you're going to have to supply all of this additional documentation validating how you use the funds. Okay. So everybody's going to have to fill out one of these forms and then the online portal information as well. Everybody's going to do that. Okay. As of today, everybody also has to supply all of those documents that we just went through, validating that you use the funds appropriately. Okay. Your question though, and I think this is where I don't want to, I have to do the least amount of work possible, and I would totally be the same way. That would be the case where I would suggest that you hold off until some point in November after the election, and hopefully they work on it. Basically what you guys want to listen for in the news, and we'll update you guys as it comes out too, but you want to listen for whatever stimulus package comes out next, whether or not it's the HEROES Act or one of the other packages that continues to come out, and at least be talked about in the Senate or the House. Again, they're not going anywhere until after the election, but those are what you want to pay attention to, because that's what's going to have that blanket forgiveness provision attached to it. Okay. So that'll likely happen, I would assume, at some point in November. Again, I can't guarantee that though. I could be eating my words come December, like I am technically in October, because I did think that it would happen in September. And unfortunately, as the election has, it's made things a little muddy. So I definitely suggest, if you don't want to do a lot of work, just hold off as long as your loan is under 150,000.
Cool. That was the last one in chat.
Got it. Cool.
Yep. So while Shane wraps up here, guys, I know we have a couple more, but just as a reminder again, for those that joined late, if you need to go back to something we talked about, or you have questions on something, I put in the business lending email in the chat. And then, like I said, all this video will be released on our social media platforms shortly after we're done here. So you can rewatch it, obviously, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and I'll put those links later. So just as a reminder.
And another note, if you happen to notice, I'm in the office today, guys. The background is very different than what you're probably used to.
I miss seeing your backyard. I'm sorry.
I know. My backyard's better. No offense, office. All right, moving along. So you've taken the PPP application, you've gotten it into the portal, you've supplied all of the required documentation like a good borrower does. What do you do next? All right, so you submit that form to us. The lender has basically 60 days to make a decision on that loan. I'm sure as long as everybody doesn't apply all at once, at least, I'm sure it will not take 60 days. Most of the businesses that have gone through the forgiveness process now have been approved after they supplied the documents within the same week or so. So it should be relatively quick. The reason being, a lot of the portal does, once you enter that information into it for us, it does the legwork for us. We just have to kind of look at the documentation and make sure it all makes sense. So it shouldn't take 60 days from our end to approve you. So normally what we'll do is we'll go through, we'll validate what you give us, and we'll say, according to us, it looks like your loan is fully forgiven, or you have this amount that's not forgiven. You can either come back and try to revalidate it and get full forgiveness, or move forward with this and start paying it back in, XYZ date. If we move forward and we send this to, well, at that point, once you say yes in whatever capacity it is, then we send it to the SBA. The SBA themselves has 90 days to actually review the request and then send out the payoff for your loan minus any EIDL advance deduction. Okay. I would definitely bank on the fact that the SBA is going to utilize a good chunk of that 90 days. The reason being is they are pretty far behind on just about everything, is the best way I could probably put it. So I would anticipate them likely dragging their part of the approval process. So even after you've heard us approve it, the SBA has to go through and then kind of validate that approval for us. That part might take a little bit longer to hear back from, unfortunately. And to be honest, I haven't heard of a lender yet that has received forgiveness money. The first email that I even got that they were reviewing things was last week. So as far as I can tell, they're really just getting into reviewing things now. And I wouldn't anticipate, like I said, them having the resources to really hammer through these things, which is why I think it just, and I know the SBA is also pushing for blanket forgiveness because of the lack of resources that they have to manage all of this stuff. So just be mindful of that. You'll hear from us that according to us, you qualify fully, or you have a deficiency balance and you agree to go forward, and it is what it is. But then the SBA has to follow through with their part, and that will take 90 days. Okay. But again, during this time frame, there is no payment due. Even if your loan documents say it, there's no payment due. You would be notified of some sort of payment well ahead of time. So please do not expect that all of a sudden that'll just come out of nowhere. Okay. All right. And again, this is for future use, guys, but I've embedded the application instructions for each of the 3 forms. The forms themselves, these are hyperlinks in here. So if you download the PowerPoint, you could certainly just click on these. And then there is a, that presentation from last week from a month ago that has the screenshots of the process through our portal. Okay, that's what that presentation is right at the. Oh, nope, lied. Totally lied. This one, the 825 one, is that presentation which has that. The 641 is how to fill out the paper application, that long paper application that's 11 pages long. Okay, so you can use this presentation for that.
It came up actually in the chat, just so you guys know that these presentations are available on our website. So that's where, when Shane refers to download it and click on those links, you can actually get it directly from our homepage on our website. If you need assistance getting that, you can obviously email Business Lending, or you can even call our call center. They can help you guide you where to find those. But yeah, those are all available on our website. So for those referencing.
Yep. Thanks, Corey. All right, guys, this was going to be a shorter one and still a little bit longer, but I'm at the end of what I've got. So what questions do you have? I will stop sharing my screen. Well, no, I guess I've got another thing.
Yeah, you can leave it. Looks nice. While we wait for you guys to type up the questions, again, this video will be available for rewatch on YouTube in about an hour or so, and all the links to it will be provided on our social media handles. So just search Net Make State Financial and whatever your personal favorite social media is, and you'll find us.
One other thing too, guys, we have been sending out communications from our marketing specifically about PPP to whoever the primary individual was, that applied for it or is on the account. If you're not getting those emails, please let us know. And it could be because you're either, had not wanted our marketing at some point, which is totally okay. and hit us, for spam, something like that. And it might be sitting in those folders, but be mindful about every 2 or 3 weeks or so, we are sending email updates, even if it's something as simple as us saying there really aren't any updates. Sit tight again. There's been a number of those going out. So if you have not seen any of those over the last 2 or 3 months, it's probably because it's going somewhere in a spam or quarantine or some other La La Land place.
All right, chat's looking a little quiet. We'll give them a few more minutes for that.
Guys, I know I didn't do that good of a job.
Yeah, you did.
All right.
That's why no one has questions. But while we, again, give you guys a couple minutes, be on the lookout for emails, social media, our website, all of our different forms of communication. We will most likely be doing more of these on the PPP program, or maybe even other subjects as the time goes on. Different way to obviously get educated by union in these difficult times. So keep a lookout on our social media and our website for other webinars like this, or just more PPP ones as changes and updates go on. And if you just like seeing Shane and I's face and hearing our voices, we're the ones you'll be getting with. Yeah, Michael, I hear that too, man. Michael said we're suffering from PPP fatigue in the chat. I think we all.
My God, you have no idea, Mike. You have no idea.
There was a question in the chat though from Tim, and I'll put it in the chat for you. All right, link, excuse me, in the chat. So Tim asked, would it be appropriate to talk about the EIDL right now?
Sure. Yeah. Whatever questions you have, I'll do the best I can answering it. So that program's not directly through us, but I'm sure I can answer probably 80% of the questions you may have.
Yeah. If you bring us some questions now, we can answer it. If you have stuff to think about in email, that businesslending@nutmegstatefcu.org that you currently see on the screen would be the best option to send those questions to as well. But we'll give you a couple minutes to type it out here. We got some time. It's a nice day out. We've got you guys out early. Enjoy one of last night's day before it snows. But all right, there we go. From Tim, got an EIDL as a backstop. Is there any forgiveness for that?
Tim, no. That is not a forgivable loan the way I understand it. I believe it is a loan that you could pay back over. I want to say they can go out to a 30-year period. I don't know that they say that everybody can go out 30 years, but no, that is not a forgivable loan, unfortunately.
And then follow up from Tim, you can give it, so I can just give it back next July is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I would contact the SBA, and I don't see why you can't just pay the thing off right away if you have the proceeds and you haven't used it. Yeah, I mean, that way you're not going to accrue any interest or anything like that. So the way that the EIDL loan worked, I think you're still technically accruing interest right now on it, but basically you don't have a payment for 12 months after the loan funds, right? So you're not making a payment right now, but Tim, you are probably accruing interest. So if you have the money and you know you don't need it, I'd probably say take it and pay it off now so that you're not accruing that 3.25% interest until then.
Off-topic question, Brian, I see you have a question on emails. So our emails are sent out automatically from the email you have on file with us. So if you're not receiving them, like Shane was saying, maybe there's an issue with your spam. But what I would do, just because this isn't necessarily a secure line, I would call our call center, 860-513-5000, and they can check to make sure you have the proper email on file for you. I just don't want to obviously go over with 25 people in the call. So yeah, give us a call about the email, Brian, and we can assist you a little bit farther with that from a tech standpoint. All right, guys. 3:45 sounds about a good roundup time to end here. So I know I said it like 3 or 4 times, but one more time. This video will be available on our social medias in about an hour or so. Be on the lookout for it. You can see it, watch it, review it, along with the slides are on our website and the other webinars from the last 6 or 7 months. And as you see the webinars go on, you'll see me have more and more hair as the webinars go on as well. So usually it's the other way around, right? But anyways, enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. If you have any questions, again, 860-513-5000 or businesslending@nutmegstatefcu.org. Other than that, guys, have a great